ladies and gentlemen.
Live from the van down by the river.
Starring
Mike Murray and
Nicole.
Rovine.
This
is
SNL.
SNL By The Numbers.
Numbers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first weekly By The Numbers show for season 48 of Saturday Night Live. My name is Nicole Rovine, and I am joined by Mike Murray. Mike Murray and Jon Schneider is our guest today, but this show is going to be a little bit different than what you might know from our By The Numbers coverage from seasons past. So we're very excited. As you can tell, we're going to be here weekly this year, which is so exciting. We have so much to just talk about. Boom, 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 every week. There's so much to say, so we're going to be here all the time. So, Mike, how are you doing? The ultimate stats guru right here, by the way. SNL stats legend is Mike Murray, and this wouldn't be possible without him. So, Mike, how are you doing?
Pleased to be here for season 3 with none other than Jon Schneider as the first guest, and it's only fitting. We met 3 years ago around this exact date. Now here we are in season 3. So, and of course, co-hosted with Nicole Rovine, so doesn't get much better than this.
Oh, thank you. Yes. And speaking of couldn't be possible without, equally true would be Jon Schneider, the host of most of our shows, the creator of this whole thing that we're doing, the reason we're here, the person who brought us all together, you, me, everyone listening, all of us. It's Jon Schneider. He's usually in the host seat, but he is giving us the chance to host the show, and he is our guest. He won't always be here, but we are very lucky to have him this week, and we're excited for his insight, his everything. So, Jon, how are you doing?
I'm great. I just want to be stop, or keep going. Either way,
yeah, no,
I'm very excited. Yeah, exactly. Very excited to be here. I think it's one of the first times that I've ever been a guest on my own podcast, so that's fun. But for me, this is a really fulfilling moment. I think Mike said it. It's been a while. I think November 16th of 2020. I looked up before was the first By the Numbers show that I did with Mike Murray and our friend Andy Hoagland, and it was really just okay, we wanted to do SNL stats. How do we integrate that into the show? And then we created this By the Numbers show when we discovered Mike on Reddit, and things kind of grew from there. And then Nicole obviously joined the franchise and became a major part of this show. And I'm really touched and excited to hand it off to the two of you for this season. Of course, I'll be popping in every now and then, but very excited to get to hear from the two of you and all your guests this season as you break down the analytics every single week of Saturday Night Live. And for those who are worried about not hearing me, trust me, you'll get to hear me enough on the other shows throughout the season.
Yes, fear not. Jon will be as much in your ears as ever. And you'll be, I would say, on as many By the Numbers shows as you were last year. It's just that we'll have more By the Numbers shows this year. So, if you're used to seeing Jon on your By the Numbers shows, once every 5 or 6 weeks, you probably will. But you will just see Mike and myself a lot more than that. So we're going to talk about everything. And we're so excited because every week there's so much to say, and also just analyzing week to week, I think is going to be really fun this year more than any other year because it's such a new season. It's a new era. As we keep on seeing this new era unveil and reveal itself, I think that analyzing the stats of it is going to be so cool because we're analyzing things that haven't ever been done before on the show. And so I think it's just a great, it's a new era for SNL. It's a new era for the SNL network, the Saturday Night Network, and it's a new era for the By the Numbers show. So with all of that said, I guess let's just start by talking about how we're feeling. A quick temperature check on season 48 on the premiere. We had a very fresh, very new feeling premiere with Miles Teller and Kendrick Lamar, and the stats, showed it. It was a new era, a new season. So, Mike, what's your temperature check? How are you feeling so far on the season?
I'm feeling very optimistic, but I have to start by saying that a lot has happened since we last met up. So, 8 departures from the cast. So, people talked about this, over the summer, but then we kept getting more and more. I was 8 departures. It's the biggest since 95. There was 9 departures then. We had Kevin Nealon, Sandler, Farley, a lot of people. They hired 6 going into the next season, and I was all right, if we can go into this season thinking about how did that look, what vibe were they going for, you know what I mean? And I was like, who did they hire? Sherry O'Terry, David Koechner, Daryl Hammond, Will Ferrell. And so they were all 28 or over. So, you know, how we view SNL now or how people in the comedy space view the show might have changed, but now 28 and younger for these 4 new hires. And Will Ferrell was the baby of that cast going into next year. He was 28. David Koechner, 33. Sherry Terry, 33. And Will Ferrell was 28. Daryl Hammond turned 40 a week after his first show. So, anyway, I was thinking about that going into this season, and excited for the new batch, and excited to see what they bring. If the show is going to go for a younger feel, what's that vibe going to look like? All that. So that's my temperature check going into the season. As far as the premiere, it seemed like the same show to me. I mean, that's not a bad thing. I love the show. It's probably the only TV show I watch. So, I mean, more of the same is good, but I like to see more different things too. What do you think, John?
Well, I think that since we started the show a couple years ago, you've gone full Massachusetts on us. It's crazy, your accent, just more and more Boston. You're like full on a Boston teen right now.
You
Yeah, every time you come on, I love to hear those that accent from you, Mike. But yeah, I mean, look, I've obviously said my thoughts on 48 so far and all the departures throughout the many weeks of coverage over the summer. But sort of a temperature check of like where I'm at midweek between week 1 and week 2 is just I think I'm higher on the premiere than probably the general public. I think that I guess, how you feel about the premiere is how strongly you feel about that first half of the show. For me, I was just like really into what SNL was doing for like a lot of the beginning of the show. And I just I could not be more excited for potential changes. So like everything new, like gimme more, as Brittany would say. And every like thing that's kind of like of the old era, I'm cautiously optimistic about. So like we'll see what happens when Cecily comes back, like Jost and Shay, as much as I admire them, like is it like is that the one like holdover from the previous era? So for me, like I think we're on era watch as we go through all of the episodes of the new season.
Era watch. That's
big
good.
time.
I agree.
Before we dive into numbers, we got to talk about that cold open, just because I had multiple people text me and they were like, this was you guys. Did you think that, John?
I didn't think it was like, okay, so I let's be real. I mean, right, not the app, but on the podcast here. Let's
time to be real.
It's time to be real. Okay,
we got 2 minutes.
Let's just talk. Yeah, I know it's the this is the By the Numbers show. We have like a nice group of live people listening here. I'm gonna be real with all of you. I don't believe that SNL directly made this cold open because of us, but I think there is like some sort of through line where the way we started looking and covering at the show a couple years ago was sort of the way that a lot of people felt about the show, but maybe that there wasn't like something that existed that covered it exactly in that way. And I have to wonder, with the emergence of the podcast and of our social media and of like the general discourse, that and the fact that we know like some people at the show are currently listening to our coverage, I have to wonder if like somehow it trickled down to like certain elements of the cold open being in there, like certain verbiage about like golden eras, or like trying to get catchphrases, or even that like one screen where they showed like the different charts and different statistics of like how many laughs they got in a particular moment. Like, that's the By the Numbers show. So I think somehow there's a through line.
I mean, SNL stats were shown on SNL.
Exactly. It's crazy.
It's true. And yeah, that's a good point, that it's like, I think what we do is we bring to the discourse something that people are already saying and thinking, like making the sports angle of SNL is something that I feel like now that we're talking about it, it's like, oh yeah, of course, it's always been fun to think of it that way. But I do think we have been the, pioneers of bringing that to the forefront and giving people the substance to work with, to talk about it and to make it fun and to make it a, really like sports. I mean, I would say I like to watch SNL the way sports fans like to watch sports, and it's making me want to enjoy sports more than I do, because I feel like I like the way people enjoy sports. So all that's to say, yeah, the cold open was like a love letter to this exact show, the By the Numbers show, and I think that we're going to continue to see more of that. I really do this season. So all the more reason that it's great that we're here every week, because we can always do a quick segment talking about if there was any SNL By the Numbers inspo that we saw at the show. So we're going to do that. But moving right along, so we're going to talk about the screen time. We're going to talk about Mike's power rankings. We're going to do some fun segments tonight. I think what we'll first do is to just show the screen time. So this is something that we've been putting up on social media and talking about in our By the Numbers shows for this is our third season doing it, so a while. And so every week we're gonna talk about it on the show. And yeah, so John, do you want to bring it up?
Yeah, we're gonna start with our screen time, correct?
Correct. So this is just
Okay.
pure screen time numbers.
Yeah,
All right,
and for
let's
the
do that.
listeners in the chat, this is where the screen time will debut every week. So going forward,
Exactly.
if you want to see the screen time,
exclusive.
tune in with us and we'll see it together.
All right, so we got it up on screen.
So here we go. So Miles Teller got 26 minutes and 50 seconds. We're just going to read through some highlights. And then, by the way, for our By the Numbers shows, you can watch on YouTube. You can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. But we do recommend for these shows, YouTube is fun. We put up, a lot of visuals that we work on. So I'll read out the numbers for this for our audio listeners. So this is for SNL Season 48, Episode 1, the premiere of Season 48. So Miles Teller, 26 minutes, 50 seconds. Kenan Thompson, 11 minutes and 13 seconds. Mikey Day, 9 minutes, 26 seconds. Heidi Gardner, 7 minutes, 50 seconds. Bowen Yang, 7 minutes, 40 seconds. Kendrick Lamar, 7 minutes, 35 seconds. Andrew Dismuke, 7 minutes, 17 seconds. Ego Wodum, 6 minutes, 48 seconds. Chloe Feynman, 5 minutes, 46 seconds. Michael Che, 5 minutes, 33 seconds. James Austin Johnson, 5 minutes, 28 seconds. Colin Jost, 4 minutes, 58 seconds. Punky Johnson, 3 minutes, 22 seconds. Michael Longfellow, 3 minutes, 12 seconds. Sarah Sherman, 2 minutes, 39 seconds. Sampha, 2 minutes, 33 seconds. Musical guest appearance. John Hamm, 2 minutes, 18 seconds. Devin Walker, 29 seconds. Molly Carney, 19 seconds. Sean White, 17 seconds. Marcelo Hernandez, 15 seconds. And Steve Higgins, 8 seconds. So that's the rundown. We're going to talk about it. If you're, again, on YouTube, you can see it. But that's the overview. So one quick thing I'll point out just from the top is Miles Teller, 26 minutes and 50 seconds is amazing for a host. So from all this data that Mike works so hard on, every week, we can start to find patterns, and that's an amazing host number. It's higher than any non-former cast member and non-double duty host from season 47. So that's just, that alone tells you a lot. Like, he, as far as a first-time host, it's like you truly couldn't do better than this. So that's just one highlight I want to bring up. Mike, any other highlights you want to mention?
Yeah, and you gave me a pretty good lead in earlier with John. You were talking about errors and shuffling errors and talking about that. Is I feel like we just had a very mini era of the show, which was the COVID era, which I would call like season 45 through 47. So now I think we're in the post-COVID era, and that era really normalized people leaving the show for periods of time. We had Kate's first 7 episodes last year. Cecily's missed 11 episodes the past 2 seasons, where she's been out of the building. 80 missed 8 for Shrill in season 46. So, but I was like looking at those episodes and I was like, there's never been one episode since Kate McKinnon joined the cast that there has been no 80, no Kate, no Cecily at the same time. So a lot of us have been, either hoping or wondering or theorizing what SNL would look like without those 3, amazing SNL women, and how that would affect the cast. And finally, we saw what it would look like. And so I want to talk about how Heidi and Ego looked on Saturday, and they had their biggest combined total at, was it 14 minutes, 38 seconds, Heidi and Ego together. So I just want to bring that up. I mean, we had Wig join in 05, who was following, Amy Poehler, and then Kate McKinnon had like a little overlap with Kristen Wiig at the end. So basically, we're going on since the millennium that like there's been a number one woman on SNL. And so Cecily's still in the cast, but while she's gone, have to bring it up. So, John, what do you think about that? And what do you think about the screen time overall?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to think that when Cecily's back, she's naturally going to be getting that role of being the number one woman on the cast. I think now it's a little bit of an ensemble until, yeah, and that's unfortunate in a way. Like again, I love Cecily Strong, but I do think that there was an opportunity here potentially for the women in the cast to kind of grow of their own generation of things. And I would agree from like an SNL perspective. I believe they're producing the show as if it is a little bit of like the post-COVID production cycle. So I do agree with that, Mike. I think that we can sort of look at these analytics from 48 and look at the caveat of like most of the people will be in the building for the season. So I think that's natural. I would also say one of the questions, and every single week we put up polls on social media and asking, different things that we're going to give the answers to on the roundtables we do on Monday nights. But we also asked this question this week, and we'll try and do this every week, which was, who do you think got the most screen time in that particular episode? And, it has to really be besides the host, because usually the host is always going to get the most screen time. So a lot of people who, may have said Miles, but from a cast perspective, we got a lot of Mikey Days and a lot of Bowen Yangs. And I would think that conventionally they would have been the number one screen time getters for this episode. But I am surprised to see that Kenan Thompson, even though he was in 6 sketches, actually had a significant amount of screen time compared to somebody like Bowen, who most people would probably say had the better episode. And we could talk about patron scores because we also asked our patrons to give us their ratings for the week. I actually think people felt overall that Bowen had the best week, though he comes in 4th overall in screen time for cast members. So something interesting to think about.
Yeah, I mean, that is a pattern for Kenan, I would say, between people guessing that or not guessing that he had as much screen time as he had. And also, as much as Kenan is the ultimate lifetime MVP, I think that on a week-to-week basis, he does not poll that well for our MVP polls historically. And I think that's a good thing because he's just such a utility player. He's just someone who's always making everyone around him look better. And so I think it's telling that he didn't seem like he was on the screen so much. And very good. It was telling for Miles, in fact, that Kenan was the way that he was on this episode. And I think if it were any other way, we wouldn't want someone to be on the show for 20 years. I think that the way that Kenan is and the way that he makes the show better is the reason that he is still there and that everyone is so happy that he's still there. So it is interesting. I would not have guessed this from a numbers perspective at all. And yet, of course, numbers can be deceiving in instances like this and patterns that we've picked up on. Kenan is often on the screen more than we think he is. And he's often doing a better job than even in the short term we realize that he is, which is always really interesting. And then Bowen is kind of the opposite, especially in his first few seasons. He always seemed like he had more screen time than he did when he was not having much screen time. And we'll get to this in a later segment as well, talking about more of that. But it's always interesting. And I think what's fun about this show and doing it weekly is that we're going to analyze a lot of those variables of the intersection of kind of what we perceive and what is true. Another thing is with the cold open, I mean, Dismukes and Miles Teller had a ton just right there because they were on the screen, as Eli and Peyton sit on their couches doing nothing, watching the NFL on Manningcast. And they are on the screen. Miles Teller and Andrew Dismukes had that same advantage from a screen time perspective. So they had a lot of screen time that they didn't have to, work for as much as, moments where they were a little bit more active. Just like Peyton and Eli, when they can get paid, they probably get paid as much money to do Manningcast as when they actually had to exert all that energy on the field, right?
I think, probably more. I think they're getting more money for this.
Yeah. So, and I mean, we could, the comparison to our data is, I think, definitely there. Like it's really valuable to be having a lot of screen time in the cold open where you're watching and observing and commentating. Like that's prime. And so Miles Teller and Andrew Dismukes had a ton of that, which is great.
Yeah, a couple quick notes before we go to the next slide. Looking at the power rankings. I put up a stat recently that because I get this, it's my I say this all the time on the podcast. It's my most FAQ as the SNL stats guy is why is Colin Jost so much higher than Michael Che? They have the same job, and so I put up a stat that of the last 50 episodes of SNL, Colin Jost has had more screen time in 86.67% of the shows. So basically, that's a very common thing. And now we have a case where Michael Che had 2 guest segments in the show, and naturally he had more screen time than Colin Jost. So in the Colin Jost Michael Che era, this is an outlier, or this is a more rare occurrence. And also shout out to Andrew Dismukes, career high. So you heard it here first.
Wow. Okay. And Andrew came in 5th for cast this week. That's pretty good.
Yeah. And the vast majority of that was him being Eli Manning in the cold open, like the overwhelming majority of it. So good for him. That's great. He's a perfect Eli Manning. I think I want to see more of that from him. But anyways, so this is the pure screen time number. So this is what Mike works really hard on always to calculate and make it. Every week we've been putting these out for now. This is our 3rd season doing this stuff. And so again, thanks to Mike. This is all couldn't be possible without Mike. And what also could especially not be is the Mike's Power Rankings or MPRs. So that is taking the screen time and adding some variables to it to give it some more oomph and some more complexity. So Mike, you want to give any first-time viewers, first-time listeners a little more explanation on the MPRs?
Sure. Season 3, you got to throw some exposition on the plot, the first episode, introduce the characters and, what the plot is, all that stuff. So in season 45, so a year before I met Jon, I started doing this thing called, I didn't really have a name for it. I just wanted to create an advanced analytic that combined the aspects of being on Saturday Night Live, because I view it like a sport. And when Jon contacted me, he was like, hey, I feel you on that too, and like we should work together. And I was like, yeah, what are you up to? And he's like, I have a thing called SNL Stats. I'm like, oh yeah, I was trying to get that domain name or that Twitter handle, so let's just do that together. Yeah, First, so I created this equation, this algorithm, whatever math term works, where you take the 2 most crucial things on SNL, which is how often you appear and how long do you appear on the show. We get more into depth on that, but those are the 2 most important things. So if you appear on the show a lot, and when you're on screen for a long time, obviously you're going to make the biggest impact on the show. People are going to remember you the most, and you're probably, popular with the writers and going to be a big star either on the show or post-show. So call it the power ranking. The way it works, it's very complicated math, but it's at the end of the day, it's not that hard to understand. I take all the appearances from the cast, add them together, get one number. I judge those appearances as, is it a voiceover role? Obviously, that's not as important as like anchoring update or playing the president in the cold open, or think about what we just talked about, Miles Teller and Andrew Dismukes. Like they were like leading and dictating the tempo of that sketch with their commentary as the Manning brothers, things like that. That's an A role. A B role is just like right down the middle. Every role I do this with starts as a B, and either bump it up to an A or down to a C if there's overwhelming evidence. C role is just like you were kind of a singular role, I call it. Not necessarily a small role, but like a role that didn't really move the plot. You were kind of just there. Think about Marcello and Devin Walker as the security guards in the Be Real sketch. They served a singular purpose in a quick shot, but they were still on screen. They were still showing up to film that day. That's a C role. And then a D role would be, you have a voiceover. No one sees you. If you're an SNL super fan, you recognize that's Beck Bennett's voice. That's Cecily's voice. That's Steve Higgins' voice. So that still counts because you're getting work on the show, but you're not seen. take all those, assign them a value, do an equation, you get a score, percentage of that original number. That's one. Other part is what percentage of the show are you in? It's an easy percentage. The show was 54 minutes long. You were in, this many minutes. That's X divided by the total. That's your score. The additional info we did is if you have a recurring role, if you play yourself, you say live from New York, those are like, we consider those very valuable as an SNL community. You're showing up again on the update desk, like Pete Davidson. You're showing up again in an impression, like Kate
R.I.P.
playing, Kate playing Giuliani, Lindsey Graham, those are Colin Rafferty. Again, people like get excited for those things. So what we do doesn't impact the whole equation, but on that score, we just throw in some bonus points. I keep saying we, but that's just my crazy mind doing this. And then we combine the screen time and the appearances. We get one number. We value the prime time between cold open and weekend update a little bit higher. So we average that once with two other numbers of the grand total. I know it's a lot of math. And then it comes out to one singular number called the power ranking. So I've never done a full in-depth description, but I figured it's a weekly show. You got to do it once.
Yep. So that is that. And now we're putting the power rankings on the screen. So again, we just talked about the screen time. Anyone who's in the live chat, we talked about the pure screen time. That was an exclusive that we haven't revealed on social media yet. And now we're revealing the power rankings. So these are, again, a lot of elements that Mike just explained, and we'll read them out. So Miles Teller is at 362.63. Kenan Thompson is also in second place here and first of the cast members with 162.39. Mikey Day is next with 136.4. Then Bowen Yang at 130. Heidi Gardner at 113.6. Andrew Dismukes at 103.3. James Austin Johnson at 93.1, which sounds like a great radio station. 93.1. Anyways, I used to listen to that. Chloe Feynman at 92.6. Ego Odom, 82.7. Michael Che, 73.2. Kendrick Lamar, musical guest, 71.6. Colin Jost, 66.9. Michael Longfellow, 59.1. Punky Johnson, 52.9. Sarah Sherman, 37.8. John Hamm, 36.2. Devin Walker, 19.3. Sampha, 17.7. Molly Carney, 14.7. Sean White, 14.4. Marcelo Hernandez, 14. And Steve Higgins, 3.3. So those are the power rankings. And as you can see, they're pretty similar, in an order as the pure screen time, but there are elements that make certain pure seconds more valuable than, any other. Not all seconds are created equal, according to these more complex rankings that Mike has concocted in his brain. So yeah, Mike, anything you want to point out from here?
Yeah, just to put some context to it. So a normal host on the show would get like a 265. So I can open up to the conversation on Miles Teller and what you guys thought about him, because he scored almost 100 points over average. I mean, we talked about the cold open. That's right there, just bumps up your screen time like crazy. And an average cast member was like 55. So this was like a healthy, good cast analytically, because we had most of the cast above 55, including one rookie, which we'll get into. But yeah, we have Kenan, Mikey, Bowen, Heidi, and Andrew all over 100. I mean, I think we did a segment last year on By the Numbers that was talking about having like quality episodes. Unfortunately, we don't do best of SNL DVDs, but if you want to hit me up and go, give me the best 13 episodes featuring Bowen Yang, I could be like, here you go. This is just like the episodes that he had the most impact on. So, this would be one of them. So that's what we love the power ranking. At least I love the power ranking because it goes beyond it's using only empirical data. It's what you see. That's all it is. And it's telling you that, someone in the background for a minute that never has a line versus somebody who walks on in a pre-tape, that's only, we'll talk about that later too. That's only, 30 seconds and they steal the show. Like, I consider that to be more impactful. So the whole point of this is to measure impact. So as far as my take on the list, Miles Teller being, huge for a premiere, ushering in this new era. And then, the rookie Michael Longfellow, Michael Che being higher than Joseph, which I mentioned. And then Andrews Mukes, again, career high. Bowen Yang, career high on power ranking. John?
So I just want to quickly clarify. So Bowen Yang, it's his career high power ranking, but not his career high pure screen time.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring that up because it's kind of a good way, because I had to do my 5-minute math explanation, which hopefully everybody woke up since then. But this is a good indicator of what the power ranking does. Is look at what everyone said on Instagram with the polls. Like, people were like, "It's Bowen Yang. It's Bowen Yang." Nicole texted me during the show, after the show, "This is Bowen Yang's career high, right?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's actually not. It's just like." His career high screen time was the Scarlett Johansson episode, the most recent one a couple of years ago. That was his career high screen time. But in this episode, you were like, Bowen dominated. Like, it was like he was the most impactful. He had the most like lead roles or quality screen time early in the night, that kind of thing. So the power ranking really transcends those two numbers that are just like, here it is, here's appearances, here's screen time. This is like what really matters at the end of the day. So that's why, Bowen Yang 130 on Saturday. That's his career high power ranking.
Yeah, I think for me, I would say like the Bowen thing is interesting, right? Because like I said, we did ask our patrons to rate every cast member out of 10 this week, and we have those analytics and the average response. Bowen Yang by far the highest rating at 8.71 from our patrons. So that is pretty significant. The next highest one is Keenan at 7.86. So it's almost like a point difference. Like, Bowen was just clearly made the most impact on screen, even though maybe Keenan's analytics and Mikey's analytics are a little bit higher. But I guess we'll continue to talk about that as we go throughout the podcast. I think there's a couple of numbers on here that certainly stand out to me. One is Punky Johnson. So Punky is somebody who is now promoted from feature to repertory. Obviously, the expectation is with some of the departures and her promotion that we're going to get to see a lot more of her. Didn't necessarily happen in week number 1, though she was in 3 sketches. So I would like to see more of her, especially like ahead of some of the rookies, potentially ahead of Jostin Che. Like, I would like to see Punky more in that, where we're seeing JJ, Chloe, Ego on this list. I feel like that's where she should be right now. So I'm hoping that she gets that opportunity at least this week, if not next week, with Megan Thee Stallion. So that's something that really stands out to me. And then Sarah Sherman, I mean, interesting, right? Like, 37.78, probably like a pretty low number for week number 1. The part of that has to do with like her, to me, what I got one of the funniest laughs of the night of her like peeking through the sketch in the cold open, but not necessarily like a long, impactful moment on screen. So would we walk away from week number 1 feeling really great about Sarah? Probably not. So, those are two that I would like to watch to see if they can have a much better week number 2.
For sure. Another thing that's interesting that Mike pointed out is sometimes those one-liners that are so memorable are more impactful than, being on screen for many minutes at a time. So it's kind of ironic that Dismukes, who I feel like the last 2 seasons, his one-liners were my favorite thing that he did. His line delivery of so many different things was amazing. Like, I know Mike is leaning up to the camera to say his bitch, because that's what I thought you were about to do, Mike. Okay, it's just me. Okay. Anyway, I thought you were doing that.
The chemistry will build between these two, by the way.
Yeah, we've only been doing this for over a year, but we'll get better. But no, Dismukes, I just feel like he is so funny at those scene stealing moments, and so it's so funny that this is his career high for screen time, and it was the vast majority of it was him sitting and observing, so it's funny how things like that will happen, where something that you don't necessarily know someone for will be their quote unquote best episode. It's just so funny to contrast that with with the numbers. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean,
so
it,
these
it does
are
help. It does
yeah.
help when you're, have an uninterrupted camera on your face. I mean, that's
Yep.
pretty
Couldn't
rare for
hurt.
SNL unless you're on the update desk. I mean, there's a lot of cuts in a sketch, some more than others, lots in pre-tapes. But like, if you have, Andrew Dismukes sitting in front of a camera from beginning to end almost entirely, that's gonna help.
Also, really
Absolutely.
great point from Blood in the chat, who mentions our friend Blood. He says that Sarah got 2 sketches cut in dress rehearsal, and yeah, for sure, like especially that Elvis one, which we've heard about. I spoke a little bit about it on the Hot Take show and a little bit on the Roundtable. That seemed to be like a pretty big showcase for Sarah, and that one, since Monday, and I believe I put this in our Patron Discord. The Elvis one, which was really a Sarah showcase, was actually cut for time, not cut at dress. So that one was intending to air, and had that aired, would have obviously boosted Sarah Sherman in the rankings. But of course, Mike will only count what airs on screen because that is, what we'll remember as canon.
And if it's kind of dress and not cut for time, we'll probably see it, the next 2 weeks or maybe later.
Exactly.
Yep. For sure.
Happened last year.
But yeah. Right. Yeah. So Dismukes, I would say if we get this Manning cast as a recurring cold open, then Dismukes, his end of year screen time and power rankings are going to look really good, regardless of anything else. If he gets 3 Manning casts this season, his screen time will be awesome. Like truly, that will be enough to make it amazing. Just that exactly what you guys said. The uninterrupted screen time for 7 minutes, 8 minutes is almost unheard of, I would say, in the types of sketches that we analyze that have been, it's not common at all. So that's fun to talk about. Anyway, so
before we move on, I'm just gonna skip over a graphic because we talked about the power rankings already. I looked up last year's average just to see, who popped out. If we see this right now, we won't have the context up on the screen. So yeah, like talking about Sarah, like last year as a rookie, averaged 31.5. So like this episode for Sarah, like, popped up in the McDonald's sketch, a little bit in the Be Real, and then had that awesome moment playing herself, which I think that's huge. I mean, sophomore SNL cast member, and they have the host being like, "There's Sarah Sherman," like name recognition. She's a part of the cast. Like, in the rankings, she gets a bump for that. So yeah, she was 37.8 versus last year 31.5. So that's a bump right there. Even if it's an underwhelming
That is better
number, it's still trending upwards. We want to see in your SNL career is trending upwards, not downwards.
Mike, what was the average for the host last year?
Average those last year, I can find out in 5 seconds if you want to vamp.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's fascinating to think about it as we start to look at these on a week-to-week basis to compare where the hosts end up, because they're almost in their own category, right? Like a 362 versus 162 at Keenan, 200 points higher. Hosts are clearly operating on different metrics. So how does Miles Teller compare to last year? 280. Okay, so that was very good.
Season 47.
And what's that's a very good episode from 47?
Yeah, for last year, 280 was the average. Overall, earlier I said 265.
And what was the highest host power ranking last year?
Jason Sudeikis.
And what was his number?
It was north of 460 or something like that. He broke the record.
Yeah. He broke.
Smashed the Mulaney's and the Maya Rudolphs and all that. So he had 34 minutes of screen time. Like as long as we do this podcast, I don't know if we'll ever see 34 minutes. I mean, the average SNL episode, minus commercials, minus montage, minus good nights, minus musical performances, just the comedy segments, is about 54 to 57 minutes, and 34 minutes of that's much more than half. So Sudeikis episode was special if you're into Sudeikis, and
hey, you never know.
Big
Brendan
Gleeson,
34 minutes, you can do it.
Yep.
I mean, if you count his promo, that promo should count as a sketch, arguably, the one that came out today.
Yeah, that was crazy. Save that talk. We're going to talk about that on the Patron show tomorrow. So yeah, that promo was fun today that we saw.
Yeah, that was really fun. Tune in to the Patron show, and John will talk more about that. Anyways, back to numbers. So we're going to, as I mentioned, we're going to do different segments every week. So definitely always going to go over the power rankings, the screen time. And then for this first episode, we thought it would be fun to compare how people do in their first episode, not just this season, but in seasons past. So Mike pulled some numbers together, and we're going to talk about that. So different people in their rookie season, in their second season, etc. So Mike, you want to explain a little bit more about what we have right here?
Yeah, it's our premiere episode of By the Numbers season 3. It's our premiere episode of 48 of SNL. So we have one chance to talk about, are you making a splash? I mean, I think probably more depends on the host, honestly, but first episode a little more hype going in the season, then maybe mid-season, maybe you get a Christmas bump and then you get the finale bump, anything like that. But so I was looking at, we have 4 rookies that I want to talk about in this segment, and I want to hear your takes on the rookies and what you expect from them, or if they made any impression on you in this opening. And then, we've been doing the show for 3 years. So I'm like, all right, I mean, we could go back further, but I'm like, let's keep it to since SNL Stats, SNL Network, Saturday Night Network has existed. Let's go through those 3 seasons and those cast members.
In the John era.
We have, this is what era are we in right now?
We're in post John. No, we're in current John.
Yeah, better in the before John era. I don't like that acronym.
Oh, you really don't? Okay.
What's wrong with the BJE?
All right, Mike, what do you think about these charts?
Back to numbers. This is math class, okay?
Yeah, alphanumeric.
Actually, I do know about some BJEs in math class.
Okay.
You want to share with the class?
Okay, let's keep going.
Yeah, any classmates in the chat, if you know where John is going with that, please tell us.
I mean, we're talking about sophomores and juniors and freshmen here, so I mean, it's very on brand. So
yeah,
look, we have 4 rookies this year. They're all still in the cast, thankfully, after 1 episode. We had 3 rookies last year, 2 were still in the cast, and we had 3 rookies the year prior, and 2 of them are in the cast still. Going back, we had Eggo come in late. We had Chris Red, Heidi Gardner, and Luke Null come in together, and one of them is left. So let's look at those rookie numbers. So these are we spent a lot of time on power rankings tonight, so I just made it simple and did the color gradient to show who's on top, who's on the bottom, and look at who had the biggest premiere as a rookie, who had the biggest premiere as a sophomore, and who had the biggest premiere as a junior. So Nicole, you want to take it away? And you don't have to read all these numbers out. It's a big graphic, but maybe just give your take on what you think about at least this premiere and the rookies.
Yeah, I mean, I'll call out some highlights. I think that the number one thing that everyone can guess is that as far as the rookies, JAJ is top of the charts. You truly cannot get a better rookie premiere episode than that. I don't think we'll ever stop talking about that in the context of these numbers, these stats ever. So he's obviously top of those charts. But number 2 here, which again, there's JJ at the top, and then there is a steep decline, and then everybody else, like no one is touching where JJ is for his rookie premiere episode. But Michael Longfellow is number 2 on that. And I'm not surprised, but it's kind of exciting to see that the number 2 on this list is one of our fresh faces for this season. That's really exciting. I think he showed a lot of promise. He showed a lot of similarities to someone who just left. He showed a lot of promise in a way that I think is exciting, something to look forward to. I hope, as John has been saying on coverage this week, I also don't want to see him get stuck in there. I think that he could easily get pigeonholed in that position. And I agree with you, John. I don't want to see that, but I also wouldn't hate it. Honestly, wouldn't hate it if that happened, because he seems really poised for that position, to be a guest at the desk, to be on the desk as an anchor. I think that he's poised for that as well. So the options are endless there, but it shows a lot of promise. So that really stands out. I'm also going to say, I only point this out because I think it shows that your rookie premiere episode doesn't have to mean everything. Andrew Dismukes is at the bottom of the list. His premiere of everyone, all the last 3 seasons, or the last 4 seasons, everyone who, for a rookie premiere episode, he's at the bottom of the list. And I think that he is well on his way to becoming, a really mainstay staple cast member he already is. He's doing amazing work and he's holding it down, and it's so fun to watch him. He's really, really great. And so that just shows there's all types of rookie premiere episodes you can have, and it doesn't mean everything for what your career is going to be. So that's cool to see. And so that's the rookie one. I'll point out a few things on the sophomore. The sophomore one is a little bit more consistent. So not as much to say there. You know what? I'll pause it at that. I feel like I talked a lot about rookie. So anyone else want to point anything else out about any of these three?
Well, Mike, before you go, can I just say just to the point of the Andrew Dismukes thing, that his arc on the show is one that you can really see here from these three charts if you're looking at this visually. So like Nicole said, like last on the chart in the rookie appearances, second on the chart in the sophomore rankings, so right behind JAJ from this year, and then first place in the junior rankings. Obviously, we haven't seen JAJ in his junior season yet, but Dismukes like steadily rising compared to his peers year to year. That is really fascinating to me. So Mike, please go ahead.
No, I was gonna either make the same point or ask you, John, to make your point. That's what I was seeing too, and I just thinking about that episode going back, and I'm like, well, we had I think the longest, at least for me, going back to season 44, the longest cold open. The Jim Carrey, Alec Baldwin debate open. We had three rookies to get in there at some point, and Dismukes really didn't have a line. He was like the Buffalo Wild Wings delivery guy, I remember. And then he popped up for like a second as the Drew Barrymore show cameraman. So that was his debut, was basically having a mask on for a second and avoiding Chloe Fineman, and then showing up and saying to Punky Johnson, "Here's your Buffalo Wild Wings." So like he had a line in the episode. So it was a pretty bloated episode of SNL for a premiere as an election year. But yeah, it is such a good indication of like how SNL traditionally uses a rookie, and that's why I was excited to talk about that cold open, because of how meta the Michael Longfellow entrance was. Right this way, ma'am. Like that's it, you're done. So like that's kind of what Dismukes, it happened to him. You can walk on as handing someone a bag of food and you will walk off. That's your one live appearance in your first episode. And Luke Null is like, why couldn't I be a delivery man on my first episode? Luke Null didn't get to appear in his first episode. Aristotle appeared twice. He was, came on in that sketch that had everybody in with the town hall sketch in the Owen Wilson episode last year. And then he briefly was in the 10-1 with Andrew and Sarah and Owen Wilson, doing the classic SNL clapboard, and just saying take two and walking off. So we can see how Andrew Dismukes can rise from the bottom of the rookies to the top of the juniors, and then see how some people could be in the middle of the pack. Lauren Holtz, 25.7. That's not a terrible rookie score. She's no longer on the cast. So it just shows that sometimes the stats do tell a story.
But what I would say is, like, look at the top four in the rookie chart. So we have Bowen at 36, Sarah at about 49, Michael Longfellow at 59, JJ obviously 131. But if you look at those top four, like, it's interesting to think, right? JJ brought back, Bowen obviously brought back, Sarah brought back. So does this mean Michael Longfellow, with his first episode being so great, punches his way into automatically being brought back next season? I would say there has to be some type of correlation between getting a really good premiere and then, being carried through to the rest of the season. Even if he, as long as he stays good behind the scenes, I think he's probably our first lock to return next year.
I'd say 100%. As a percentage guy, I rarely ever say 0 or 100, but I would say 100%.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big statement from Mike. 100. I agree. It will be, contingent on other forces unrelated to his performance and his capabilities if that were to happen. But yeah, I think he did a great job and it was well received and it felt fresh. I feel like I feel like he'd be a great fit as an anchor. So I think that could be an option. But yeah, no, I love the point about Dismukes. It truly is. It's a story. It's a journey. But then there's
I know
also
before we move on,
those
I
other
want to
rounds.
ask you
Yeah,
guys,
sure.
because John, I think, had a great opening statement on this chart, is would you guys name anyone from their class that was a bigger impact? You know, I mean, we'll look at the top four. I mean, Sarah and JJ, obviously, they're 2 out of 3 of that class. So that's hard to say, but like, you know, Michael Longfellow, obviously, I mean, it's too early to tell on the whole season, but the episode clearly of the 4 is the one that stood out to us. I mean, he had the most screen time, the highest power ranking, the most probably votes in your MVP poll of the rookies, you know, all that stuff. So would anyone argue that, you know, Aristotle was a bigger impact on last season, or would you argue that Chloe had a bigger impact on her season just because we're looking at Bowen, JJ, and Longfellow of one episode? Would you guys argue that those stats are wrong or paint a different picture?
Well, I think if I understand the question correctly, if you're asking me like who had a bigger impact in the rookie season, Chloe or Aristotle, I'm not. It's not even results oriented thinking. I think it's absolutely Chloe Feynman.
No, I'm
And I
saying
think
of their entry class.
of the people. Compared to their contemporaries. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
Aristotle. I mean, I
absolutely.
think Aristotle. I do believe entered with like 2 greats, potential greats on the show.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know that it made much of a difference. Like I think if everything went right for Aristotle, I think that 3 rookies could have easily moved on next year. It just obviously didn't go right. But I think it's probably easier for like Chloe and Bowen to come in together and figure that out, like just the 2 of them versus like coming in 3 or 4 people. Like eventually, like we haven't been able to parse between the results of Molly, Marcelo, Devin, on the show yet, but eventually like one of them is going to like fall behind the rest of the pack, and then the talk will be about them for the rest of the season, because that's just the way SNL works.
Yeah, big time. And before we move on, I
Yeah.
just want to ask if either Nicole or John has an answer. Any chance? I mean, we don't have a crystal ball here on SNL by the numbers, unfortunately, but what if either Angelo was a 10-1 rather than the mail delivery 10-1 with Sarah and Andrew, which was in the Owen Wilson premiere. So Angelo ended up being 10-1 in the Rami Malek episode, which was episode 4 in late October. And then the Laugh and Tosh, Aristotle's one and only Weekend Update appearance, which is during the Jonathan Majors Taylor Swift episode, which is in the first half. If those sketch appearances by Aristotle happened in the premiere, and look at our show, look at Saturday Night Network, how we talk about this kind of stuff, and we do a Patron show, and we talk about this on the Monday Night Roundtable. Like, imagine the discourse around someone like Aristotle. So if we're going to do a lot of dialogue about Michael Longfellow, let's just imagine that alternate tangential universe where we're saying, look at this guy, Aristotle Atari. He's the next big star. We have the stats guy saying there's a 100% chance he's back. So I just mean that while we're on here, let's just imagine that premiere influence and impact. It can be an indicator. Not always, of course. Numbers don't lie, but they don't always paint a great picture. So I just shout out to Aristotle. Maybe if you got a good premiere, you'd still be with us. But what do you think,
Yeah.
John?
Well, I'll go quickly first.
Yeah, go Nicole. Sure.
Sure. I'll be quick, and then John, I think, has more of an answer. But I think it's interesting to ponder, but I feel like what made JJ and Sarah such potential greats that we foresee them being so is things that are irrelevant to whether they had their breakout moments in the premiere. So JJ being the political impressionist that he is, I think that is just like an automatic, oh yeah, this guy is going to be good. This is amazing. So whether that happened in the first episode or the 4th episode, I think it wouldn't have really impacted anything. And then for Sarah, something I always say with Sarah is I think one of her biggest strengths on the show is the way that she collaborates with other people. And for me, that mail-in sketch, I talked about it so much last year. It was one of my favorites. That duo, for a long time, I was thinking about them, and I still would not be opposed to them as a Weekend Update duo, as anchors. There was a moment there where I was really hyped about it. And I, again, still would love that. But I think that, again, the collaboration for her first big moment on the show to be in partnership with another cast member, I think that's something, again, whether that happened in episode 2, 3, 4, 5, I think it still would have been something that was more a pattern than an isolated moment, whereas Aristotle's best moments were isolated. It is Angelo, a one distinctive character, or Laughingtosh, a one distinctive update character. So I think for them, their strengths, it wouldn't have mattered whether it was the premiere, whereas Aristotle, I think if it did happen in the premiere, I don't think that would have been reflective of like any sort of pattern that we could have anticipated afterwards. So I would say no. Long answer, no.
Like, for me, not to plug our freezing cold takes, but if you go back to our coverage, we did 2 shows that I think are interesting for this discussion. One was when the initial cast, the initial new cast got announced in season 47 of JJ, Aristotle, and Sarah. We did like a go live like preview of them. I believe we did that, or maybe it was the preseason show, but one of the shows pre-season 47, we talked about them. And I am pretty confident that the entire panel's take was really excited about Aristotle, really excited about Sarah, different voices, different styles on the show, have no idea what JJ is going to bring to the show. You know, apparently he's a good impressionist, but like, did they need that? And he was the biggest question mark. And then if you go back to our preview of this season's cast from just a couple weeks ago, when we were talking about the 4 of them, Michael Longfellow was that person. He was the one that we were like had the biggest question marks about. We seem to like feel pretty good about what we're going to get from Marcelo, obviously like really popular in media. Molly, they have a new voice to bring to the show. And Devin was a lot, pretty close with a lot of the writers, but like Michael Longfellow was somebody who I just think we just didn't know enough about. And to me, it's the second year in a row that's really exciting where SNL brings on a person that they know way more about than we do, and they surprise us with that person. Because I think he was nowhere near the betting favorite to have the results that he did. So to me, I think it goes into a lot of like producer decisions. And I think that if you had to, carry this on to next year, season 49, we have this new class of people that come in. I think we have to watch the one that we know the least about, because I think that's what SNL likes to do to us. They like to surprise us, and then those people catapult to success. They're really like all about bringing these people who are just like of the like least popularity, even though they have some stand-up success, and bringing them to stars. It's incredible to watch.
Yeah, that's true. I think, Longfellow was definitely of the 4. I would say probably number 4 out of what our community people on the podcast had anticipated for the premiere episode. Although Molly did have a huge, very exciting role in, again, this promo, which is not canon. So we will not talk about it in earnest on the By the Numbers show. But again, that was huge. I mean, that was awesome. I love the promo,
it does
and
count.
I loved it.
Yeah, it doesn't count for the analytics, but it counts for like
Sure.
our discussion, I think.
Yeah, I think that is a huge decision, like, and a really exciting one to have like a first year cast member in the second episode starring in not just in a promo, but in the type of promo that we haven't seen in a while. It feels, both of those things in tandem feel really fresh. So
definitely,
I'm pumped for that.
All right, put a pin in that. We're gonna talk about that more tomorrow.
Pin. Okay. So moving along, we now are going to do this segment where we just want to highlight a few cast members, and we just something where we want to bring attention, whether we thought they had an amazing week, whether that we wish they had a different type of week than they had, just people that we want to really analyze from the statistics perspective and all that kind of stuff that we do here. So Mike, I'm going to go to you first. Who do you want to highlight today?
You don't want to give yourself the first overall pick?
She's done that
No,
already.
I learned my lesson.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Don't put salt in the wound. I put myself first on the cast draft, and I realized anyone, if you do a 2-round snake draft, don't put yourself first. Put yourself in the middle. Anyways.
All right, I'll do the I'll do my first pick here. We did a record breaking show at the end of last year. We were on for 4.5 hours. Okay. And we went through every cast member, and I had a pretty scorching take. I was pretty disappointed that there was this Keenan sketch in the show and not Pete's kind of farewell sketch, his pre-tape about Lorne Michaels. And I was like, Pete Davidson, I could see as a guy who might never return to the show, where, I could see Kate or 80 coming back to host, sooner than later, rather than Pete. And so I was just like, something about Keenan, going against what SNL is about by having a revolving cast and having different eras of the show. Maybe SNL wouldn't have wanted Adam Sandler to be interacting with Will Ferrell. Maybe they wouldn't have been good together, and that would have been an awful show. And Will Ferrell maybe never would have shined. He wouldn't have become the next star. So the person I'm picking is Keenan, because I was watching Saturday night and I was just seeing Keenan pop up, and I was like, first of all, this guy is made for this show. He's so good at it. I'm a huge fan of him. Always have been. Always will. And the fact that it's his 20th season, he's coming in first in power ranking off the bat. He just puts up hundreds all the time and which is like a lot of those middle players, the Alex Moffats, the Melissa Villasenors, like they, when you see them get 100, you notice like that was a great show for Melissa. That was an awesome show, even for an Ego or a Heidi, which we now consider them stars. So for Keenan, it's effortless. He puts up 11 minutes and 13 seconds, and people don't even realize. And I don't think that's because he was invisible. It's just because Keenan is synonymous with the show. So love it or hate it, that's the way it is. He had 6 appearances, had the highest power ranking, and he didn't show up in the cold open. They even mentioned it. How was Keenan on the bench? We talk about how power ranking, favors people who have these long appearances, which opportunity allows for in update and cold opens. Keenan will pop up in monologues too, albeit briefly. But I want to talk about Keenan because I just wanted to know what you guys thought about him popping back up in the show, which no one doubted. 20th season. And then he's like, pretty quiet in the McDonald's sketch, but then he kind of has a last laugh in it. He's briefly in the AMC pre-tape, but he gets the button at the end. And he's pretty quiet in the Caribbean Queens sketch at the end of the 10-1. And then he still gets, the lead off comedic part in update alongside JJ, his first update appearance. So yeah, that's I'm talking about Keenan. 2 leads, 4 supporting roles for 6 appearances. He had 162 final score, 11 minutes 13 seconds. What do you guys think about Keenan this week?
Yeah, I think those are great points. And another way that the cold open was so meta was saying, "Oh, you haven't even put Keenan in yet." That's like when you have a bunch of Eli's and Peyton on the sidelines, whatever sports. But that's another thing that it ended up being that Keenan had the best numbers of any cast member, despite not putting him in the cold open. That is yet another very meta element of the cold open that we just truly can't talk enough about. I think we're going to come back to that cold open on the By the Numbers show time and time again. So I agree with you. I also think just like it's good to when cast members have low numbers and we think we saw them more. I think the same is true when they have really good numbers and we think we saw them less. I feel like those kind of inverses are equally good, which is a weird paradox, but I think it's true. So yeah, I agree with you. John?
I think for me, Keenan probably puts up the quietest stats that I've seen on the show. Like if you walk away from that night, like at when we started the hot take show, did I think that Keenan was in 6 sketches? I would have been like, I guess, but like, I have to think that, especially all this new era talk, Keenan's been through this before, right? Like he's been through every era of the show. I think that, he probably walks in at the beginning of last week or whenever he was there the week before setting up his office. And he basically says to the writers, like, hey, don't make me the star of anything. whatever you need, like you need another person to be in a sketch, like throw me in a sketch, because like everybody knows that they put Keenan in it, like their sketch is a little bit elevated. And like, I think that's the role he's going to take, especially with all of these changes, probably for the first half of this season. Like maybe there'll be one episode throughout the first 9 and like the front 9 that we'll see like is really like a Keenan episode. But I think he's just going to put up like quiet, like top tier production for the first half of the season at least. And then in the second half of the season, once things are more comfortable, I think that's when they're going to like play to his strengths a lot, where you're going to see a lot more of like the at-home movies thing that we saw last year, like where they're able to like really play with his skills. Because right now it's like he's a secret weapon that they don't really need to use, and they just, the best way to use him, I would think, is to just throw him into anything that they feel like needs a little bit of a boost.
Word. Okay, so I will go next. So I am going to talk about Bowen. I was so excited to see Bowen's episode. Another very meta moment from the cold open, of course, is when Peyton and Eli, Miles and Andrew were talking about how Bowen was really going to step up this year, but he looks nervous. And then he tried to make this catchphrase a catchphrase, which, am I the only one who has been saying it this week to myself? That it is what it is. Is that kind of sticking unironically?
It is what it is.
You definitely have not been the only one saying that.
Okay, good. Because I think it's unironic. I think that will be a thing. Merch. I think we need if a sweatshirt comes out from NBC, I will be buying it. Like, yeah. So anyway, so that impact alone, I mean, talking in that way of, oh, he was supposed to step it up this year, anything like that was whether it was like, oh, Heidi's never let me down, like, of course Heidi, that is so Heidi, or Sarah Sherman being like a creep in the window, like that's so Sarah. So I feel like it was all truths, anything being made fun of about a specific person in that cold open was ultimately a truth, and that truth was that Bowen was going to step it up this year, or I should say step up this year, and that's what everyone was expecting and hoping for. He's the only current cast member who was nominated for an Emmy in the most recent award season, since Kate was as well, but she's not a current cast member. So Bowen had, just from that perspective, there was a lot of momentum. He's in so many things. He's in so many movies, and all the readers out there, Lost Culture girlies, the readers, the Katies, we are quite the army out here. So I just feel like there's been so much momentum around Bowen. He is the promo king. We ran with some stats that we posted in the spring. We reposted them last week. He led promos last year, and he's in the first promo this year. So he was poised to be like kind of the star of the show this year, and we definitely saw that. And it was not just that he was in so many sketches, but he had really fun and impactful parts of every sketch, whether it was something that he had to say in writing. So the Lanternfly on Weekend Update and the Be Real sketch were the two that he had, I think, the biggest kind of hand in. And then everything else he was written into. So all of that, I think, is amazing. The Be Real sketch, some statistics that I saved to talk about until now, which we did bring up, we posted yesterday, but I'm going to use some Google Trends to talk about the person I want to talk about. So if you search in Google Trends, Be Real app, there is a huge spike on Saturday night, Sunday morning, right when that Be Real sketch aired. And that was Bowen and Please Don't Destroy and Celestium and all of their impact. So that is some statistics that I definitely think are worth mentioning on this show. I feel like Bowen does a good job of taking culture outside of SNL and fusing it into the way that we
Lost culture.
Talk about SNL. There you go. Bingo. And the other way around too. I feel like he influences culture via SNL. So I just feel like he was so poised to have the type of episode he had, and I was not let down at all. I'm just so excited for everything else he's going to bring. He was in 6 different sketches. It was a really good balance of material that felt like his specific voice that came from him, as well as material that he collaborated on, as well as material that he was written into, because I feel like he now has such a distinct voice with the public and at the show that I feel like he's so, I'm going to try to make this a good word, but he's so right-inable this season. I feel like anything, right? Can we try to use that? I feel like that's a good one. He's very right-inable. just thanks. I guess I would have even if you said no. But yeah, in a similar way to Keenan, I would say Keenan and Bowen in different ways are both probably the two most right-inable cast members right now. And that's a great place to be when you have great material, when you're great at collaborating, and people want to put you into their sketches and they have distinct places that they see where you would be valuable. Like, that's amazing. So he's so poised for a great season, and the premiere really, really showed all of that.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I will leave like the utter Bowen praise to Nicole because I know that that's her thing. So for me, I will say that I was really impressed with what we saw with Bowen in week one. I was definitely hesitant when Nicole took Bowen first in the draft, but definitely had a great week one. It's kind of incredible to think about because, you know, Bowen and Chloe both in their fourth seasons on the show. And a lot of the talk has been since we started the podcast a few years ago was like, can SNL create stars that transcend the show anymore? And I wasn't 100% sure. Like, I didn't know if that was a thing because, you know, there is the proliferation of people creating sketch content on TikTok and growing through their own ways beyond Saturday Night Live. So, like, is this a star making vehicle the way it once was? And I have to think if you look at, you know, the career trajectories of somebody like Bowen and Chloe, yes is the answer because, you know, and probably the major difference here is that Bowen is on the show and off the show, whereas Chloe's probably a little bit more off the show at this point. But Bowen Yang is producing outside the show. He's become a huge star, and he's also putting up the numbers so far on the show, which I think will help. I think will boost him even further. I like to see that. I would love to see the same thing from Chloe, who had a very good week and a very good pre-tape, but Bowen is putting in like incredible numbers in this week one. So for me, like Chloe's probably going to be a star in the world of fashion like forever, and Bowen's going to do a ton of projects. But the question is like, can both of them continue to succeed on SNL? And I think for now, the answer with Bowen is yes.
Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad someone picked Bowen because we needed to do a talk about him tonight. So, like I said earlier about the power ranking and the screen time and how they differ is, you know, Bowen Yang, I think, just made such a huge impact, career high score. And, look at this season premiere, he's on Update again. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention the Iceberg last year. It's his longest appearance in SNL history for his career is the Iceberg in season 46. He was in the trend forecasters twice last year with 80. So he had, even a mini, 3 times. Okay. So a mini recurring character there. He's had Chen Biao, he appeared as himself. So, and he also had last year, like the Chuck E. Cheese or he did the outdoor cabaret with, in the Bateman episode, the choking poster thing with ScarJo, things just these, he'll do these one-offs that the diehards know and love that he's a star in, but the Update desk still holds power. And I think Bowen yields that power, with the most finesse. So I like where Bowen Yang is. I feel like, he's, we don't want to see him potentially become somebody who you're sick of, because some of our favorite cast members, we dread that feeling. But I think he's at a great place where he can do a little bit in a pre-tape and you're so happy that he's there. But he also can do these big, lavish characters on Update. And I wanted to ask you guys, do you guys have interaction with these lantern flies?
Oh my gosh, yes. I won't. I'll spare you the details because on the Hot Take Show, when I was recovering from the emergency room, I talked about it for about 8 minutes. But absolutely, yes, the lantern flies are very real. And they came, I think they were in New Jersey in July, and they were here in New York, spreading this way by August, and they have been terrorizing, and it is very real. And that hit home 100%. Yes. So beware.
Okay, because
wherever you live.
I have a lanternfly story from September of 21 that I have to say briefly because I never thought it'd be relevant on a podcast that I'm on. Is I was in New York City for my bachelor party, September of 21, and I I was taking the train there with all my groomsmen and everything, and my brother-in-law missed the train, so I was at the platform holding my Dunkin' iced coffee, waiting for him, and he was late. I had to hop on the silent car, and I couldn't hang out with my friends because I was just, by myself. So I read the New York Times on the way there, did the crossword puzzle, and there's an article about these spotted lanternflies and how if you see them, you should kill them immediately. And I was like, wow, that's a pretty, as Bowen said, aggressive message. Kill them immediately on site. Don't think about it. Just kill them. So fast forward, everybody gets to New York City, night one of the bachelor party. We're on a rooftop bar. This is, I went there for week 2, Pats Jets, and it's like Saturday night. One of these flies lands on my brother-in-law who was late for the train. And then someone, oh, that's like a weird looking bug. And I immediately swatted at it. And everyone's like, Mike, what are you doing? And then it flew away, landed on the thing. And then I just stomped on it. And everyone's like, whoa, what was that? I was like, if you see one of these things, you have to kill them immediately. So I was like,
there it is. So you were
go.
early to it because I didn't know about them until this summer. And now I have been killing them. My doorman killed one off of me for me because it was on my back. But yeah,
so
they're real. But one more thing on just because you mentioned the iceberg, I feel like I was nervous that because the iceberg was technically last year, but it was 2 seasons ago. As you said, it was 46, and I feel like that was Bowen's big moment. And since like none of us here are casuals, I would say as far as SNL viewers, we are not casuals. We are all about the deep cuts. And so there's this part of me, I'm also just as far as Bowen Yang's content, like I am as much of a reader as there is. And so I feel like sometimes in the media narrative, when people talk about Bowen and his experience on the show and what he's brought to it, I think there was a moment where it was like all the iceberg and everyone just wanted to ask him about the iceberg. And I feel like we are past that, which I like, because as much as I like the iceberg, I just feel like that's such a fraction of what he's brought to the show. So I feel like this episode really solidified that he does so many different things on the show. And it's the iceberg and it's so much else. So I feel like this episode for me now, I'm like, okay, perfect. That, people see all these different things. And in all this press coverage, it's not just people asking Bowen about the iceberg because, so I had to bring that up. Okay. Now, John, who would you like to talk about?
Yeah, one last button on Bowen, which is just that he was our MVP from this past week that we got in the MVP poll that we do and we revealed on the roundtable. So 33% of our audience at the time said that Bowen Yang was our MVP. So good for him for week number 1. And yeah, the person I want to talk about is Mikey Day. I would like to talk about Mikey because I really found it fascinating to see the discourse about Mikey last season versus season 48, episode 1. Mikey Day was the one who we constantly neglected to talk about on the podcast, not on purpose, but just out of a cast of 21 people. He just seemed to be the one that sort of like fell through the cracks of like, he was just there. He was consistent. He was doing his thing. Season 48, episode 1, he's there. He's consistent. He's doing his thing, but everybody's hating on him. At least that's what I saw a lot about online. I think he had some redeeming things in this episode, not everything, but some stuff. And it seems like a lot of people were criticizing him. And then, so the reason I want to talk about it really is because like my biggest question is Mikey Day doing anything different than he did last season? Or is just the fact that we removed 8 cast members, now he's like the, tall piece of grass, that was just mowed? Like, is everyone just like looking at him now because he's like the one that was left? So Mike, I would love to know from you, like statistically, is Mikey Day producing the same as he was in season 47? We're just criticizing him more because he's more noticeable?
Definitely. I mean, we one of our last shows last season on By the Numbers, we did talk about like I think either post the Paul Rudd episode or post the last break, and I was saying that Mikey Day has had the most consistent like top episodes, and I'm just looking at his screen time from last year, and since episode 15 of last year, so Zoe Kravitz, he had a down episode. And then here he just goes on a tear of 11 minutes, 5 minutes, 9 minutes, 6 minutes, 7, 7, 9. including this last week was 926. So he is behind Keenan and potentially Cecily when she returns. Is the most consistently seen member of the cast. So that's nothing different. He's been on the show for a while already. So it's not like, we're seeing more of him all of a sudden. Like he's been there. His premiere episode when he was a rookie, he was with Margot Robbie and played Matt Chat for the first time. And we kind of established what he brings to SNL and what characters he will play for his tenure. I don't see that changing anytime soon. Going back to like the Selena Gomez pre-tape when he plays the boyfriend by himself and things like that. So he's always going to be that role. And so I feel like if you don't like Mikey Day, you're not going to like him anytime soon. But he brings his A game to everything he does. And the rooftop bar sketch this week was a great example of that, just because his brand of humor is like pretty specific, but it also has a large appeal because you don't need to like get a lot of things to understand it. And so even if he's not your favorite cast member, he's probably gonna get you to laugh on Saturday night. So I think that it's a great point that you bring up. I guess I didn't see too much hate for him online, but if anyone's complaining that they saw too much Mikey Day, it's like this is how it's been, ladies and gentlemen, of the last season. Like he is the glue guy who's not named Kenan Thompson. So he will be, and I consider him to be, like, I use this word a lot when I describe what like an A role is on a sketch, is like a tempo guy. Like he's so good at dictating the beats of a sketch. So like rhythm in sketch comedy and stand up is almost, as they say, the space between notes is more important than the notes in music. So like his rhythm is crazy good. So if the joke writing is not for you, or the sketch premise is not for you, he'll make you laugh because his rhythm is so damn good. So like, and he does these voices, he does these wimpy characters and stuff, but Mikey Day is somebody that I believe was probably, if not already assumed like Keenan he would stay, was probably asked, Mikey, just stay for another season. It's a new era, new bodies coming in the door. Just stay. We need you to be that guy who can pump out sketch material and dictate how they work. And people are accustomed to a certain thing on the show, and we can't abandon that. So Mikey Day, Keenan, stick around for a year. If you want to leave. But Mikey Day is, I think, like the perfect guy to have that utility role. And I don't think he, would work otherwise. That's what he brings to the show.
Yeah, I agree. I'll give my 2 cents on it. I also think with Mikey, and this I would distinguish him from Keenan a bit. I think he's very responsible in his partnership with Streeter over the last several years for the tone of the show in a lot of ways, in ways that we as audience members don't even realize, and in a cumulative way. So I think that his influence behind the scenes is something that has it's just been big for a long time, and I think now we're seeing it in a more outward, external way, with him being definitely one of the forefront cast members. And yeah, I mean, it really was a lot of people left. I know we've said that a million times, but yes, we got 4 new cast members. But when you think of people who are when they know how to use them, when someone has been there, I'm going to exclude the 4 rookie cast members for a second. And you think of, like, say, male roles, there are 3 new male cast members. But then as far as men on the show, so there are 3 new guys. There's our Jostin Che. So suddenly that's 5 of the men on the cast. And then there are really only like 5 other guys. There's Bowen, Keenan, Mikey, Dismukes, and one other person. But that suddenly, well, let me just look so I know what I'm saying. But I feel like, as far as like male roles, there are a lot fewer than, fewer people than I think it seems who can be go-tos. And Eric said in the chat that the rooftop bar sketch and the Adam Levine impression, Eric said he's not sure that those would have gone to Mikey last season. And I totally agree with that. I think just certain things as they're up in the air, like, yeah, I think Mikey is being handed more, and he's doing a great job. But I just think that, like, you know, certain things would have been Kyle or would have been Moffat or would have been somebody else. And so it is interesting to see. And then
It is
let
what
me
it is.
just, it is what it is. So exactly. So yeah. So in terms of male roles, and JAJ, who's still a featured player, but I'm going to loop him in with, like, you know, people who have been there. So really, like, as far as men on the cast, yeah, excluding Jost and Che, excluding the three new rookie guys, it's Mikey Day, Andrew Dismukes, Keenan, Bowen, JAJ. And so that's not a lot at all. And then the same can be said for the women, which is another conversation that we'll have at another time. But it is a smaller cast than I think it seems like, for sure. So a lot of cast members will be, you know, put to the test a little bit more.
I agree.
Yep. So any other notes on that, or we're ready to keep rolling?
I'm good.
Okay. So I think next we're gonna talk, in this Jon might get a little bit back in his hosting chair for this, but we're gonna talk about some patron ratings. So Jon, can you explain what we're gonna do here?
Sure. Yeah. So if you don't know what patron ratings are, or Patreon, that is our patron program where we have a group of paid subscribers who help support our show and help us to be the best that we can be. So very indebted, and always like to put our patrons first. So one of the perks of becoming a patron is getting involved in some of the shows, including our patron feedback show that will air on Thursday. So if you're ever interested in that, you can always register, patreon.com/the SNL network. But we also are starting something different this year, where we're going to be asking our patrons every single week to rate each cast member out of 10. And then we want to know those metrics so that Mike and Nicole can involve them in the discussions, because it's always good to have another variable when we're talking through the different metrics that we're going to talk about on the By the Numbers show. So for me, very exciting to get to hear from so many of our patrons today. So thank you for all filling out that form. And there were definitely some fascinating results here. So I'd like to, talk through just a couple of them, and I'll sort of do this solo. But basically, like I said, Bowen Yang coming in 8.71 here. That's out of 10, right? So that's like almost a 9 out of 10. That's really, really high for all the responses and averages. I think one of the other interesting things is like Jost and Che. We talked about that earlier in the episode. Che had a statistically better episode than Jost, but in these patron rankings, Jost was given by impression a higher rating for the week, 6.57 versus 6.2. So like a fair amount of people voted higher for Colin Jost. And then it seems that most of the other repertory cast got somewhere between a 7 and an 8. Punky was the lowest at 5.93 from our patrons. So it seems like everyone was pretty high on the main players. And then the featured players, Michael Longfellow comes in at a 7.57, which is like probably in the top 6 or 7 for the week. Devin Walker, 5.29. And then Molly and Marcelo come in at 3.36 for Marcelo, 3.29 for Molly. So just, things to think about as far as like the perception of the public on these players. Definitely the pecking order was established here as far as everyone is viewing them. And I'll be interested to compare some of these ratings to people next week, but not too many surprises so far on the patron ratings. But definitely if you want to submit those, you can do that. Okay. Nicole, the other thing I think we wanted to talk about was the draft.
Yeah. So what was referenced earlier was the fact that I'm not good at choosing when to put myself in a draft. I won our last draft. Therefore, I got to put myself wherever I wanted in the one we did most recently. And I put myself first, which I learned is not actually the optimal position when you have a shorter round of snake draft. So anyways, the draft that we did most recently was a cast draft, and that was 8 of us panelists got together, and we chose cast members based on projected sketch appearances. So that's something that we didn't show a chart of, but we did kind of talk about it, essentially the number of appearances in a given episode. So that would include musical appearances, right? Musical performances, John, hypothetically.
Only if it's a double
often.
duty host, then
Exactly.
if the cast member introduces them, then yes,
exactly.
that would count.
Which
So
like Kate did that for Billy last season. It happens.
it'll happen with Megan Thee Stallion coming up.
Exactly. Yeah, or I mean, not necessarily if she has family introducing her,
Sure,
but
sure,
it yeah. But so just to clarify what an appearance is, any sketch, just not the intro montage, not the good nights, but any individual, the cold open, the monologue, any pre-tape, any live sketch, any update segment. So that's all one sketch. So like we mentioned, Bowen had 6. Everyone had different numbers, and so basically in our draft, everyone got 2 cast members, and one person did not get chosen, which was Colin Jost. And I feel like if anyone on the list, that one, I don't think we will lose sleep over it. I don't think he will lose sleep over it. I think we're all just fine that Colin Jost was the loner who got left off. So we are updating everyone on where we stand. So who is winning, and
So I could do that if you want.
Yeah. So John, explain.
Okay. So let's talk about the draft standings from week number 1, and we'll do this periodically. I believe that Nicole and Mike won't be doing this every single week, but we'll try and do it throughout the season. And we also want you to be able to follow along, by the way. So if you do have a draft that you're doing at home, I know some people tweeted us their drafts that they did with their families or their friends and stuff, and you want to know the official official appearance stats for the season. These are the same stats that SNL uses. This is the same stats that Mike uses for his rankings as well. So if you want to know those and you're missing that out, let us know. But I'll go through the teams really quickly. So Sammy picked Keenan and Michael Longfellow. TJ did Heidi and Devin. Nicole was Bowen and Shay. I was Mikey and Molly. Bill was JJ and Marcelo. Haskell, Dismukes and Punky. Rebecca, Chloe, and Sarah. And then Haynes, Ego, and Cecily. So our standings for the week, Team Sammy comes in first place with 9 points. So he gets that big boost with 6 from Keenan, and then Michael Longfellow's huge week. DJ's in second with Heidi and Devin. Nicole and I are tied for third place, Bowen and Shay, and Michael and Molly. And tied for fifth place, we got a 3-way tie right now between Team Bill, Team Haskell, and Team Rebecca. So that's the JJ Marcelo team for Bill, the Dismukes and Punky team for Haskell, and the Chloe and Sarah team for Rebecca. And then in the last place, we'll see how far he slides before Cecily gets back. Ego and Cecily for Team Haynes, already 6 points behind the lead. So this is going to be a fun thing to watch throughout the season and see who takes it. Mike, as the independent arbiter of the draft, do you think which team do you think is going to win?
Tough to say who would win, but I'm looking at. I just pulled up the Instagram page to see what the draft order was. I knew Nicole went first. I wanted to see who picked last and where the best value is. It's really how you grade a draft is. Grade a draft is where the value was. So I'm like, I wanted to see where Ego got drafted. I mean, so I'm seeing Ego got drafted by Team Haynes at 7th as a steal. And the fact that he got Cecily on the back end, biggest value team is Team Haynes. And that's coming from me knowing that team is in last. Ego, I think, is like a Mikey Day or a Keenan, where put her in anything, small or large, you're going to see a lot of Ego. And when Cecily comes back, she's going to climb up the power rankings. We were looking at last year doing the By the Numbers show, and just seeing Kate just at 0 down with Punky and Aristotle, and literally just climbed like right behind Keenan and Cecily. So I expect that from Cecily when she comes back, is that she's going to be appearing a ton and for a while. So if this draft was based on screen time, it would be a lot more dynamic ups and downs. But if we're going on appearances, then Ego and Cecily team is great. I think the smartest draft, like I said, that's most valuable, but smartest, now that we have the knowledge we do have, is probably the Sammy team, because Keenan is like consensus number 1 overall pick. And I'm seeing that he was drafted 2nd after Nicole. So that's the no-brainer is Keenan. He 81 last year. He was, dominated last year. Draft Keenan no matter what. And then Michael Longfellow is like probably the greatest rookie pick. So that being said, I don't hate the I don't like the Dismukes and Punky because it's a lot of variables there. Chloe and Sarah, a lot of variables there. I don't know how much they'll be used on a consistent basis, but Mikey and Molly, I like the Mikey pick. Molly might just be that person who just, put them there, put them here, and you're gonna get consistency. We never know with that stuff. And then I like the Heidi and Devin because Devin Walker could just be that person. The fact that he was in more than two, right? He was in the cold open. He was briefly in the Be Real, and then he was Frank Ocean at the end. So right away, that's three for Devin, and Heidi Gardner is gonna be that until Cecily gonna be that number one female cast member, and Heidi Gardner puts up numbers no matter what. So that's my take. Team TJ I like, Team Sammy I like, Team Haynes I like. Sorry, Nicole and John.
No problem.
Of course, John and I are tied. I'm always
Yes, for sure.
reminded that, I'd like to be in competition with John all season, even if we don't win. I think that would be fun if we're neck and neck for third place.
We will
That's
see
fine
what
with me.
happens. But yeah, we'll try and update our audience as much as possible throughout the season.
It sounds like Team Sammy is unbeatable just from the premiere, right?
We shall see.
We'll see. Cool. Well, that has been most of it. I mean, I guess anyone want to just throw out a prediction for episode 2 while we're right here? Any pure by the numbers predictions? Anything at all? We want to just say anything.
I will save my predictions for tomorrow, just because I'm doing that show tomorrow. So I let Mike, if he has any predictions for week number 2.
Okay.
I would say I'd point out right off the bat, we saw it with like Woody Harrelson and Billie Eilish. Big discrepancy between the host and musical guest age with Brendan Gleeson. Like to see an Irishman get the hosting job. You don't see that too often. But with Willow being a young musical guest and an older host, so I'll point that out from a numbers point of view. We'll see how that shakes out. I expect Brendan Gleeson to be game. I mean, look at the most obvious comparison is Willem Dafoe. I mean, look at Willem Dafoe like showing up in the Will Forte monologue, and then he did that wacky Beauty and the Beast sketch. He was in pre-tapes. I just think when you get a pro actor in there, like who you might argue has no business being on the 8H stage, I think those episodes are my favorite to look forward to because I don't have expectations. But I think he's not going to have the Miles Teller score that we saw tonight, but I think it'll be a great cast episode, and I think it'll be really fun because whatever we see, we're not going to be expecting, and that's when SNL, I think, operates at its best.
I agree. I totally agree. And he made it very clear that he is young in his spirit with that skateboarding, like shredding it up. I think we are in for a youthful energy this week, despite any age. Age is just a number, although numbers are very important to us. So that expression is kind of futile at where we are right now. Doesn't really matter because age is but a number, but numbers are awesome. With that, this has been really fun. Thank you to John, our first guest. John will not always be here with us, but we are very happy that he was here. So, John, how do you feel? How'd we do? Are you excited to give us the reins going forward?
Yeah, I mean, like, I love hosting the show, but it's also really fun to be a guest. So, like, I enjoy guesting on some of our friends' podcasts as well, and coming in every now and then is very nice to be a part of this. But like, I couldn't be more proud of the two of you. You're just incredible podcasters, incredible friends, like little brother, little sister vibes. And for me, it's just very excited to get to see what you both do with the show this year. So I hope everybody stays committed to joining you in the live chat throughout the season because I know you're going to do some great work.
Thank you. Aren't you and Mike like the same age, though? Are you the little brother thing?
I don't know.
Okay. You can call me little
sister. We're born
fine.
the same year, Nicole.
Yeah.
I think John's 4 months younger than me.
Okay, so older brother, little sister.
Sure, you can call me that. I'm the youngest one here. Not by that much, though. Anyways, so John, you want to kind of explain every time you said tomorrow, explain what you're going to do for the patron feedback show, and just also, throw out anything, shout out anything you want to say that we have coming up.
Yes. So join us tomorrow night. The Thursday shows will be at different times throughout the seasons, depending on the availability of certain patrons. But tomorrow night, we're going to talk to Lewis, who's joining us from the UK. So we'll get that UK perspective on SNL's first week. And then we have Brennan joining us, I believe, from the Midwest. So it's always fun to get different people from around the world. Last year, we had patrons all the way from Australia join us throughout the season. So those shows will be on Thursday evenings, starting anytime between like 5 and 10 p.m. throughout the season. Tomorrow will be at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we will be live to talk through the questions from the week. And those questions will be asked from our listeners. So the general public, you can ask questions. We put up a Google form on Twitter today and in our Instagram stories. If you want to get your questions in for that show, we'll take anything. We'll talk about anything from SNL that's related to the previous week and to the next week. We'll also talk about anything else throughout the week that we didn't get a chance to talk about. So for example, like I said, a lot of interesting discourse about plagiarism when it came to that Charmin sketch. I want to talk about what that means, how that works with SNL and that stuff. I want to talk about the Gleason promo that came out today that was extremely different. So those are the types of things we'll do on the patron shows on Thursday. So I'll be back live tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern for that. And then we'll be live for the Hot Take Show at about 1:10 a.m. on Saturday night, right after the second episode of season 48. And I will be live with TJ Randolph and Andrew Dick for that one. So you know the show is going to be spicy.
That is, wow. Good luck, John.
Thank you.
Good luck being in the middle of it. That'll be fun. That'll be like you'll be the like little brother with like two fighters. That'll be great. I can't wait to watch it. And Mike, what's new with you? What do you want to plug? Anything else as we wrap up?
Just huge thanks, first of all, to people that are in the chat. Like, you're the reason we do the show live. So the fact that you're showing up, I mean, I never thought I'd be competing against Jeff Probst. But here we are. So the fact that you're here Wednesday night at 8:00 means, or 8:30 means a ton to us. And you guys just like inspire us with our discourse on the show and for future weeks. So keep showing up and DMing and tweeting and Instagram messaging myself, Nicole, and John, and the Saturday Night Network page. And then, of course, thanks to my co-host, Nicole, sitting in the driver's seat tonight, introducing these segments. And, thanks most of all to John for curating this show, giving us a full season run. What more vote of confidence is that? So we won't let you down. And I'm excited for this season because, opening up, hitting new on the spreadsheet is a good feeling. Hit new, type in the number 4 and 8, hit enter, and it's blank. And we got hopefully, 20 more episodes to go of SNL, 20 more stat sheets to go through. I mean, that's a lot of hours on my end, but I'm not complaining. And then we got 20 more of these shows with Nicole and I and a lot of fun guests. So we'll see you very soon. Nicole?
Yes. And thank you again, Mike. I could not say enough that this truly could not happen without Mike and his stats, without John and the creation of all of this. I am not fully disposable, but I do feel that I am very grateful for the other two people here. This would not exist without either of them. And so I'm just so excited to be a part of it. And so again, the chat, thank you. If you're listening later, we thank you too. You are also important and we value you as well. But it's just special shout out to anyone who joins us live in the chat because it makes it fun and it's fun to engage while we, just adding some commentary and fun to it makes it great. So with all that said, just we'll keep you posted. Follow us at the SNL Network everywhere. We're going to be posting. So you got the exclusive on this with the screen time and all that stuff. We're going to post it on social media by the time you listen to this or watch it. If you're not watching live, everything will be up. So go look at our social media and you'll see on Instagram and Twitter all the screen time charts and information. And then of course, now that you're here, you've got it all. So we've had a great time chatting and this has been great. So we will see you next time. Have a good one, everybody.